時間到有
Members, it's gone past the scheduled time. We have attained the quorum and now call the meeting to order. This is the Subcommittee on Rating Exemption Order 2015, election of chairman. Will members please make the nomination? We need to have a nomination verbally. We need a seconder, and we have to have the acceptance of a member nominated. Mr. Kwa Him, I nominate Mr. Andrew Leung. Seconder, Mr. Lee. Mr. Leung, to accept the nomination? Yes, I do. Any other nominations? Unless there is other nomination, Mr. Leung is elected ipso facto. Congratulations, Mr. Leung. Thank you very much for your support, members. Do we need a vice chairman? If not, shall we invite the administration in, please? Welcome, officials with us for this meeting. Ms. Mabel Chen, Deputy Secretary for Financial Services and Treasury. Mr. Gary Poon, Principal Assistant Secretary. Mr. Pak Keung, Assistant Commissioner Rating and Valuation. And Ms. Frances Hui, Senior Assistant Law Draftsman, DOJ. I hand the floor over to you, Secretary. Chairman, let me briefly outline the salient points in the paper. For 2015-16 financial year, the Financial Secretary announced that a number of one-off measures would be rolled out. One of them includes the waiving of rates for the first 2 quarters of 2015-16. Rates is a broad-based and stable source of government revenue. In the light of the uncertainties in the economy and the weak consumption power, the government would like to stimulate economic growth amid these uncertainties. And having regard to the fiscal position of the government, we propose to waive rates for the first 2 quarters of 2015-16 with a cap at $2,500 per tenement per quarter. This arrangement is similar to that for last year. Last year it was $1,500, and this year the cap is $2,500. This proposal will benefit about 3.15 million properties liable to rates payment. During the 2 quarters, about 86% of all the properties will be exempted from paying rates. In other words, for the 2 quarters, and they will not be liable to rates payment. On the 25th of February 2015, this was gazetted, and on the 18th of March, we have put this to let go for negative vetting. We estimate that these measures will result in a one-off revenue foregone of $7,741 million. Perhaps I pause here, Chairman, and I welcome members' questions and assist in the scrutiny of this order. 4 minutes each, please. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. The government said a moment ago that 14% of the properties will not benefit from this exemption or rebate, as I call it. there's about 400 to 500,000 properties because of the low rateable value. And I think we're talking about all tenement buildings in all the districts. And from my understanding, the owners of these properties are from the grassroots, and they are least capable financially in the community. A lot of them are actually senior citizens. So from this perspective, the exemption order will be restricted to the 2 quarters of the year. And I don't think that this will achieve the purpose of offering relief to the residents, offering sweetness to the owners of these properties. Maybe the administration would give me the same reply as last year. Why is it that after the last exercise, the members suggested that we should cover the 4 quarters instead of just 2. Now, why is it that in this exercise you still stick with 2 quarters instead of 4, and not allow all the property owners benefit from the exemption order? Secretary, Permanent Secretary, Chairman. Thank you. Let me clarify the statistics. Now, we are talking about $2,500 for the waiver, and 86% of all the properties will be exempted from paying rates. Now, they include all the low properties of low rateable values. The remaining 14% are in relation to those properties with higher rateable value. Each quarter, the rates payment will be higher than the cap. So these 14% are higher than the level. As regards 2 quarters versus 4, last year we worked on the basis of 2 quarters. We are adopting a similar arrangement this year. Since 1988-89, we have 4 occasions on which we offered the exemption for 1 to 2 quarters. Each year, we have to have regard to the economic situation that is prevailing, and also the financial affordability and the fiscal situation of the government. Simply put, when we consider whether we offer concession for 2 quarters or 4 quarters, we have to consider the fiscal situation and the utilization of the resources in such a way that more properties would be able to benefit from the exemption of the rates. We'd like to benefit as many properties as possible. And having balanced the situation, we are of the view that with $2,500 cap, 86% of the properties will be able to enjoy the exemption, and that will enable us to achieve the objective and the policy consideration that I referred to. So you have considered all the factors and decided on this mode. This is in Chongkai, where you can offer a credit of $5,000, or you can allow them to enjoy the benefits within 1 quarter or within 2, 3, 4 quarters, up to a ceiling of $5,000. Or you can break it down to $1,250. It would be better for them to be given a credit of $5,000 per account. That would be fair. And now those who can afford will benefit more. Those who can least afford it will benefit less. Now you're distributing the money. I am living in a smaller property. I'm paying less rates, and you're offering $2,500, and I may be paying $1,500 per quarter, and I'm going to get $3,000. Why didn't you offer them a credit of $5,000? If you can't do it technically, I can offer you the service for free. Permanent Secretary, Chairman, if we offer $2,500 per cap, or $5,000 per 2 quarters, if we adopt Mr. Sin Chung Kai's proposal, each quarter will be something like $1,250. And that would mean that the financial burden on the government will be more than $7.741 billion. There will be an additional $4 billion that will be foregone. So we have to consider this as one of the one-off relief measures. In the budget, we have the extra child allowance, and that is $3.4 billion. Rates is a broad-based and stable source of government revenue, so we have to strike a balance between the source of funding and this relief measure. Mr. Sin, well, if you say that my proposal would incur an additional $4 billion, why don't you have a lump sum and divide it up by the number of accounts? I am mystified that since we're distributing wealth, those who are more wealthy will enjoy more. Those are less wealthy will enjoy less. I'm talking about logic. I'm not talking about technicalities. Permanent Secretary, if I may add one point, Chairman. Each quarter we have a specific cap, and this will enable properties of a different rateable value to achieve a regressive effect. Mr. Zhong Shikan, Christopher Zhong, I don't think you're doing anything more. If you're offering $5,000 per owner, if you can't use it per quarter, then you can defer it until you can have the amount deducted fully. You're not doing anything more administratively. Now, for those owners with more than one property, the idea here is to alleviate poverty, and to alleviate the burden. Now, a friend of mine has 4 properties. Now, there's not too many. He's not wealthy, and he's going to benefit from this scheme. And 4 properties, he's going to get $20,000 altogether. Now, that's more than what you're going to get from a cow. Now, he's not living in these properties. Why are you still benefiting him? I think you are benefiting the wealthy people. You're worried that they are not wealthy enough. Permanent Secretary, 2 questions, Chairman. The first question is to offer them a lump sum for the rate payers. Now, I must emphasize that when we design the proposal, we are looking at individual units as the basis, and we consider the amount of rates that they pay per quarter. In other words, the amount of exemption would be the amount that they pay, or up to a cap of $2,500. So it's not a question of a lump sum of $5,000 per 2 quarters. So we have to look at the actual amount of rates that they pay per quarter, and that's the basic consideration. The other point Mr. Zhong mentions is that there are people who have their own properties not for self-occupation. They may be owning more than one property, and this exemption should have regard to the number of properties people own. I must emphasize that in terms of the rates assessment and collection, I will look at the rateable value as the basis. The occupiers or the agents do have the obligation to pay rates. When we evaluate and collect the rates, we do have a regard to have the rate payers and make the necessary arrangement. If we restrict the number of units that will benefit from the exemption, then some tenants will be at a disadvantage because some tenants will be paying the rates, and they will be paying the rates, and they will not benefit from this exemption at all.
Many tenants do not enjoy it, even with this payment of $5,000. And many actually owners would not return the rates to the tenants. But if, the tenants will give them money, then they could ask for exemption. So why are you giving them reward money? So I think this contradicts your rationale. So lump sum, what's the problem with lump sum? Your purpose is to ease the burden. So it doesn't contradict with your rationale. So what do you think, Deputy Secretary? Chairman, I'd just like to supplement that apart from looking at the situation of people paying the rates in properties rented out, it's very common that the tenants are responsible for paying the rates, and the owners or the landlords in non-domestic premises or like shopping malls, for the sake of management, they would actually pay on behalf of their tenants. We know that quite a number of flat owners, once they get the waiver, would return the waived rates to the tenants concerned. Thank you. Next one. I think People's Power is always against this policy of rebates as a one-off relief measure because people with the more properties would benefit more, and the wealthier you are, the most benefits you can get. So I don't know what it means for being a relief measure. Just then, the government says that based on its information, it shows that many tenants pay rates. Can you provide us with the information? How many percentage of tenants have to pay rates? Did you get it from a public opinion survey or what? And you said that the landlords would actually deduct rates from the rents obtained from tenants. But what proof do you have? Can you provide us with the information to support that? And also, all along, we've said this year after year, why is it that there's this rebate for 2 quarters, maximum of $5,000? Why not just deduct it in one go? But of course, the government would say that you would say, well, you have to divide it by 120.15 divided by 4, and the government will end up having to lose. But can you give us your accounts, whether it's 1,000 or 1,200 per quarter, if you divide it by 4 quarters, would it actually lead to the result of owners getting more in return? Have you done any calculations? Like last year, what percentage of owners can get the full of the full amount of the returned rates? Why don't you adopt our proposal? That is, use your own, budgetary sums. Okay, $1,000 for 4 quarters. Why can't we do it that way instead of actually offering the rebates for 2 quarters? What are your considerations? Well, just then Chen Chi-chen mentioned, and also what Chong Shi-kan mentioned, I'd like to supplement on that. The Rating and Valuation Department has declaration forms given out to people who pay rates. Based on the information collected from those forms, it shows that for most non-domestic premises, the flats are rented out. And among them, more than 50% are cases in which the tenants pay the rates. And as for the issue of quarterly, 4 quarters or 2 quarters, I remember last year, Chen Chi-chen at this subcommittee meeting at the same time last year, we actually did do a similar analysis. We said that looking at people with similar, financial burden, if we divide it or do it on the basis of 4 quarters, then we also did some comparisons, and it showed that if we use this 7.7 billion figure as the base and to spread it out over 4 quarters, then the ceiling for each quarter for rebate would be below $700 per household per quarter. So given this, compared to $2,500 per quarter, 60% or more than 60% of the properties would be entitled to an exemption of what's below the current provision. And private and non-domestic premises will be affected the most. I think members would know for these premises, the rateable value tends to have a wide range. So the end payment will be higher. So if you reduce the total amount drastically, people most affected would be those in the private residential market and non-domestic market. That is people renting factories, offices, or shops. Next one. I think it's very easy to do the calculation. The government's proposal of the waiver on rate is done on the basis of a cap of $2,500 for 2 quarters. For a rateable rates, for those below 2,500, that means on the annual basis, the rate will be reduced by half. So compared to the practice last year, is similar. Of course, last year the ceiling was lower. The rateable amount will be below $1,500, but that also equals to a reduction of about half in a year. People said that why don't you just give them a one-off amount? But I think for this measure of returning wealth to the people, well, you can have various measures, each with its own objective. But for a measure to offer exemption on race, I think the practice this year and last year seems reasonable to me. You may say, what about properties with a lower rateable value? Should they be given a more high amount? But I think for those in need of help, there are other relief measures available. If you want to give out money to people, you can also actually have the same argument for children's allowance. You can argue that, well, if you're giving out children's allowance, why don't you give, an allowance of $100,000 for people without children? So all these policies of returning wealth to the people could be confusing. I think what is being proposed now seems reasonable. And the 14% of the people whose rates would be about 2,500, they would only be actually otherwise and be entitled to a maximum of 2,500 per quarter. So they will be actually paying more than half of what's needed every year. But Chairman, so I would like to find out more instead about the situation in which the owners actually are asking their tenants to pay rates. I think it's quite common that, of course, the owners pay the rates, but that could also mean that the owners will impose or transfer the cost to tenants. So when the owners negotiate the rental with the tenants, the owners will take into account the rates payable. Has the government done any statistics on how many of the, how common is the situation that the owners would transfer the cost to the tenants? Do you have such a figure? Deputy Secretary, thank you, Lo Wai Kwok, for your question and views. I think your interpretation of the figures and our rates policies on high-value properties and low-value properties, I think your analysis is accurate. As for owners asking tenants to pay rates, all along, whether rental includes rates and who's to pay them is actually subject to the agreement or the contract signed between the tenants and the owners. The government, through the Rating and Valuation Department's information collected from declaration forms, I think it shows that quite a number of non-domestic premises are rented out. As I said, most, or more than half of these rented properties are ones in which the tenants have to pay the rates. That is, the rentals do not include the rates. In cases where the rentals include rates, there are actually provisions inserted For example, like in the cases of shops in shopping malls, the owners would actually, for small tenants in a shopping mall, ask the raise and rentals to the owners, and then the owners would pay the raise to the authorities on the tenants' behalf. And our further survey shows that, especially for owners with more tenants, like a survey shows that about more than 85% of the tenants actually paid the raise to the department on behalf of their tenants. So this is just to facilitate management, and it's also easier for the department to collect raise because they can collect them in one lot from the owners, and then the owners, once they get the exemptions or exempted money, they will return them back to the tenants. Chairman Yip, this exemption for raise and incentives or rebates of sales tax, etc., all those measures will only actually aggravate the wealth gap, because with these policies, those who are wealthier, for example, those who are paying property tax and so forth, they will get more or special special care from the government. So the wealthier they are, the more they'll get. So I'd like to condemn the government for their actually for its thinking, which is unfair to some people, and this will only aggravate the wealth gap. So John Tsang's approach, to me, is totally actually a measure that neglects the difficulty facing many people in the grassroots. So you are actually continuing to look after the rich and the privileged people with power. So the more powerful you are, the more care you get from the government. So I think this actually shows negligence on the part of John Tsang, the financial secretary. So I'd like the government to provide us with some information as well. Before, we asked you to give us information on the top 10 companies. How much raise did they pay? I was told they got a company get $90 million a year the most. So in the past few years, that means they will get up to $200 million. But then for the very poor families, they will get nothing in return. The government, can you give us a list of, over the past few years, when the rate exemptions were in force, what are the companies that get the most rebates? The top 10 such companies, and how much in total they've got back? And based on the past 3 or 4 year statistics, please tell me the top 10 companies over the past 4 years, how much in total they've got back in rate exemptions. This will show how ridiculous the policy is. And also, based on this year's situation, can you tell us how many companies got 100% rebate, or how many got 75% rebate? How many units are we talking about, and so forth? How about those who got more than 50%, 50 to 75% back, 25% back, 50%, and less than 25% back? Please let us have these figures so that it will show us how unequal this policy is. People with values, with high value, will get all the rebates back, and people living in subdivided flats will get nothing because your property is of such low value. So this is a very unfair policy under an unfair system. The wealthy people, proportionally speaking, will get the highest amount back. So please give us these statistics to show us how ugly the government policy is. Deputy Secretary, well, as for the companies that pays the highest amount of raise, in the past we've done similar analysis. Let me give you some figures now. For details, we'll give them to the subcommittee in due course. For the companies that pay the highest amount of raise, this year we assume that they will be the exemption will be worth $15 million, involving residential units up to 1,600 in number. And we actually have, through our survey and liaisons with these people, we know that most of these units actually, is that company Link? Well, I think the organization shows that the arrangement with the tenants is such that the rentals do not include rates. Therefore, the rate exemptions or the waivers collected will be returned to the tenants.
Second, in response to Mr. Albert Chan, regarding this one-off measure not being able to benefit the grassroots people, I must point out that the rates exemption represents a one-off relief, and the government expenditure has been increasing year on year. This year, the rate of increase is 11%. Recurrent expenditure, a 6% increase. Now, these are in areas of welfare, healthcare, and education. We like to increase the recurrent expenditure to take care of the needs of the grassroots people. Now, for these one-off measures, the idea is to stimulate the economy and achieve a stimulus effect, and to relieve the financial burden of the members of the public. So we have to strike a balance. For the grassroots people who are not paying tax, and if they're not getting any relief from the tax exemption, rates exemption, we do have the benefits in terms of CSSA and the rent concession. Well, you are talking about the distribution of the benefits. Well, we do have measures. We do have the initiatives to offer the exemption and concessions. Mr. Chen, I was asking for the information. Will these be all made available? Yes, indeed. Mr. Tony J., Chairman, I do own my own properties, and I do support this exemption myself because these will benefit not just the grassroots but also the SMEs, like I'm renting an office, and the rates exemption is granted to me by the landlord. With regard to the exemption, the cap is $2,500, and they will be available for 2 quarters. Some are suggesting that it should be 4 quarters instead of 2. Even if it is 4 quarters, there are still people who cannot maximize the benefits. Now, you are saying that you like people to benefit to the maximum. In some cases, the rateable value is high, and they will be able to benefit the $5,000. For others, the rateable value means that they cannot maximize the $5,000 even if they pay the rates. So it would be difficult to please everybody. But the main thing is to offer some sort of one-off relief. Like the Permanent Secretary said, this will achieve a stimulus effect. For an SME, a couple of $1,000 may not make a big deal of difference. It's more, it would cost them more to hire the employees than this amount of money. If I may put a question regarding paragraph 4 of the paper, for private properties, 85% will be able to benefit from the measure. Now, for the first 2 quarters, 85% will get the full exemption. Chairman, this is 2015 to 16. In terms of the rateable value, I would imagine that there would be adjustment. As we all know, the rental has been on the rise. For 2015-16, the rateable value is likely to be adjusted upwards. just looking at the market situation. So when you when you put together the data, did you factor this one in? With higher rental, certainly there would be more people who will be able to benefit. Now, for non-residential, it is 59%. The percentage is all set to go up because that would mean a higher expenditure. Permanent Secretary. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Now, Para 4 has a table there. Let's say private domestic premises, 85% of them will get full exemption without paying any rates. Now that has factored in the figures, the adjusted figures for 2015-16 in terms of rateable value. So we have had regard to the latest statistics. The second thing I'd like to clarify is that for the 3.15 million properties liable to rates payment, they are supposed to pay rates, and they will be able to benefit from this relief measure. Now, for the remaining 15%, they will be able to benefit. It's just that the rateable value is a little bit high, and the rates payment are higher. And in these 2 quarters, other than the amount capped, they still have to pay the rates. So the 85% we are talking about here are those who are paying up to $2,500, and they don't have to pay any rates. Ms. Sitho, Chairman, I think it was Ms. Chen who came and explained the situation. I mean, it would be good because she knows all our arguments. I think the thing is, since you have $5,000 in concession, if you break it down to 4 quarters for the property owners, then they would stand to benefit more than it would otherwise be. Now, in the table, it says that 85% of the properties will enjoy full exemption, but how many percentages of the owners do not get the maximum $5,000? Now, for some, the rateable value is not high enough for them to pay up to $2,500, and they're not maximizing the amount. For the third and fourth quarter, they will not get anything. How much money will the government be saving as a result? Now, if that's the case, people will get the perception that the government is really biased in favor of the slightly more expensive properties, and they're getting more from the government. But for the grassroots, for the small middle class people, they may have a small property and they're not really benefit as much. We advanced this argument last year. Why don't you make the changes this year? Last year, you may say that we didn't have any discussion. We have to keep it under wraps, and you ended up with 2 quarters, and you may not be able to change it in time, but we have already stated our position. I think this is all really reasonable. I think the pro-government members or the Democrats are seeing eye to eye in this regard. Why is it that this time around you were sticking with the previous model without listening to the views of the Council? Permanent Secretary, well, let me address this simply. Last year, some members made these arguments at the subcommittee, and we did conduct the analysis afterwards. This year, in our deliberation, we did consider different models and different scenarios. Ms. Sitho referred to the $2,500 per quarter and $5,000 for 2 quarters, and if we split it up for between the 4 quarters, we did consider the financial burden on the government that will be far more than the $7.741 billion revenue foregone. That there will be a lot more than the revenue foregone here. Now, if we stick with these $7.7 billion as the starting point, can we spread it out to the 4 quarters? Each quarter, the ceiling will be reduced to $700 per property. On this basis, those who will be most affected are the properties in the market with different rateable value. And then the percentage of those who will enjoy full exemption will not be as high as 85%. It will come down to about 20%. Now, for a non-domestic, it will be coming down from 59% to about 10%. So having regard to the domestic and non-domestic markets, we're not talking about the properties with exceedingly high rateable value. And these properties will be adversely affected. We did consider all the other relief measures like rental concession for PRH. We have decided on this proposal. We did listen to members' views before deciding on this, what we consider to be a more desirable proposal. Ms. Sitho, if I may, please, will you join for the second round? Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. A lot of members have expressed their views. Let me simply summarize my own observation. I think the question is, what is fairness? Should we distribute $5,000 to all the properties and call it fair? Or should we deduct half of the rates for some of the properties? Would that be fairer? There is no question of right or wrong. Now, you did hand out cash per head before. Here today we are addressing this rates exemption. I think we have to have regard to the rateable value when we consider the rates exemption. I think it's only fair that we do it. When I first spoke, I made the analysis, and the permanent secretary agreed with me. If the rateable value is $2,500 or less, then you're going to get half or 50% reduction. Or should it call it fair if we distribute the same amount for everybody? Or should we follow this model and call it fair? I stand by what I said during the first round, and I feel that the government's proposal here, which is similar to last year, will have my support. Now, last year, the cap was $1,500 per quarter. Now we are talking about $2,500. And this is a really staggering rate of increase. The number of properties that will benefit from it would be higher, or 86% of all the properties in Hong Kong. For properties with very high rateable value, they will be restricted to $5,000 per year, and I think this is a reasonable way forward. Right? The government is using this regressive idea. Perhaps the permanent secretary might wish to stress this regressive element of the proposal. Well, Chairman, now we'd like to make it fair to the ratepayers, and we work on the basis of individual units. And different properties would attract different rateable values. So our starting point is not so much offering the $2,500 or $5,000 as the lump sum. We look at the rateable value and the actual rates that the ratepayers are paying. That the idea of a regressive approach is to address the concern that members have that we should have the same benefits for the rich and the poor alike. Well, this regressive element is not so much for the owners, but also for the tenants also. So it is a package of measures here. Ms. Sitho?
I'd just like to do proper calculations with the Secretary. She said that if it's spread out over 4 quarters, then the exemption given to each household will be about $700 per quarter. That's what I heard. But that's based on your assumption of a base amount of $7.7 billion. But if everyone is to get the $5,000 exemption, then the amount would grow to $11.7 billion. So we're talking about asking the government to hand out an additional $4 billion. With so much surplus now, the government can also, the government is saying that it may have a deficit in 10 years, but we are not talking about a regular exemption. So if we are offering exemptions, why don't you let the, people in the grassroots or small property owners who bought their properties long time ago get more exemptions so that they can get the maximum of $1,000 odd in exemptions every quarter, instead of having 50% or more of people who can only get more exemptions if they live in bigger flats. I'm really regretful that the government, you knew what we said last year. Of course, we won't object to your proposal because we like people to pocket whatever is available. But I like to put it on record that since the government has such a huge surplus, if you want to handle money, you should actually make the money available to people in the grassroots, those who have a bigger need. I'm just talking about residential properties here. For some families, if they are able to live in more expensive, bigger flats, then why would they need the subsidy subsidy for rates? I think that's where our difference lies. I really find it strange that we told you so much last year, and yet the government has not taken them on board, and you're still going ahead with your practice. Rates is a broad-based base or source of income. But in 1997, you've got more revenues. You can actually compensate for the loss, with your rentals, other rentals, from government rents. So you've got so many land leases that have been renewed. So you have government rents that would add to your income. So if you offer more exemptions, I'm sure that would affect your basic figures. As more and more places will see increase in government rents, actually you are getting a 3% increase in land income from land. So that should actually allow you to pay more attention to people in the grassroots. Yes. Let's respond to Sid Ho's point. Of course, the government has surplus, but how big it is, no matter how big it is, whether we should use it in relief measures, that's something subject to debate. And I also like to do an analysis here for income that result from rates. We're talking about an income of about $20 billion a year. If we raise the base figure from $7.7 billion to, a higher amount by spread it over 5,000 to 4 quarters, then that would mean an increase of $4 billion. That is quite a figure, given that raise is supposed to be a stable source of government revenue. So you need to look at where we get our revenue. And also, you have to consider that we have a very narrow tax base. So we need to consider the stability of the income. Well, if the government thinks that it is losing it in one go, then you can withdraw your exemption. But what we're saying that you should offer the exemption in a reasonable manner so that people who are most in need of help can get the help. You said that if you divide it over 4 quarters, then each quarter people will get about $700. Well, on the face of it, you may think that people will lose out because now they're getting $2,500 per quarter for 2 quarters, a maximum of $5,000. But if it's $700 per quarter and then 4 quarters comes to $12,800. But if you look at only pay $1,000 a quarter and you get 2 quarters of exemption, then you get $2,000 back. Okay, $2,800 for 4 quarters. So that shows to us that, people from smaller flats can benefit more. But so the end result of your policy, present policy, is that people living in bigger flats would be eligible for the ceiling of the exemption. So I want to get some figures from you. Can you let us know in the past or this year, units, what percentage of all the units there are, among units which get the maximum of 5,000 in rate rebates? Okay, so you're asking for information on a number of units that can get the maximum of $2,500 in exemption. Yes, in other words, we're saying that more than 80% of residential units will get full exemption up to $2,500. So, and 40% will actually get a cap of $2,500. No, I don't think you understand my question. The 80% is the ones who can get the maximum, but some may only get a few $100s. I was asking you what percentage of them, of the eligible households, will get the maximum of the full exemption of 5,000. Well, 14% of the tenants would get the full exemption. That is, maybe they are paying 2,500 or more in rates each quarter. So of the 80-odd percentage, can you tell us who are entitled to half of the exemption? Can you give us a range of what they're entitled to? Yes, we can give you the breakdown. Any other questions from members? Okay, if not, then let's go to clause-by-clause scrutiny. Secretary? As for the rating exemption order 2015, it is an annex of your paper. Section 1 talks about the commencement. It's written that the order will come into operation on April 1st, 2015. No problem. And the second section, interpretation, is stated that in this order, concession period means each of the following periods. A, April 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2015, both dates inclusive. And B, July 1st, 2015 to September 30th, 2015, both days inclusive. So actually the practice this year, or the wording is the same as that last year. So in other words, we're talking about the first 2 quarters. Any questions? No? Please carry on. Okay, section 3, exemption from payment of rates. So here it states that a rateable property included in the valuation list that is in force is exempted from the payment of rates in respect of any concession period by an amount equal to the rates payable for that period, or 2,500. That is the ceiling, whichever is less. The amount of 2,500 is reduced on a pro rata basis if rates are payable for only part of the concession period. That is the standard practice. And this is for actually handling properties that are actually doing, that we only need to pay rates during some parts of the period. And so this is the same arrangement as last year. Okay, no questions? Okay, if not, then that's the end of the scrutiny. Any legal advisor, any views, Secretary? So, scrutiny period is up by April 15. So we need to go to the House Committee by March 20th. The period for amendment is April 8th, 2015. Do we need to defer it to May 6th? We can extend it to May 6th. Okay, that's extended to May 6th. For the House Committee, we'll report to it on April 24th. And amendment, the motion to amend the order will be on April 28th. Okay, so we'll follow this schedule, and we'll ask the Secretary to follow this timetable. So thank you, members. Thank you, administration. Thank you.